How often do we walk past a totally ordinary building without giving it a second thought? Well, this is a story about what happens when someone actually stops and asks a simple question, a question that ended up uncovering voices that had been silent for decades, hidden right out in the open. So it all started right here. Back in 2015, a researcher named Sarah Fuller was in Morrisville, Missouri, and she saw this library. I mean, it's not what you typically picture, right? This kind of humble, trailer-like building just made her stop and wonder, what's the story here? How did a place like this come to be? And what did it really mean to this community? And that one simple building, it sparked a massive investigation, kicking off with some really big questions about the entire history of libraries in Missouri. Fuller really wanted to get past the official version of this story. She was asking, how did these little libraries even get started in the first place? Who are the people that made it happen? Did these places actually change people's lives? And here's the big one. Were any of those personal human stories buried somewhere in the dusty old state records? So what's the first logical step? You head to the archives, right? She started digging deep into the official records of the Missouri Library Commission to see what they had to say. And at first, the archives showed pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a government agency. Numbers. Lots and lots of numbers. Statistics, progress reports, budgets. It painted this picture of clear, steady, institutional growth. From just 18 public libraries in 1907 to a whole statewide system by the 1940s. On paper, it was a total success story. Yeah, and this image right here really captures the story those records were telling. It was a story of achievement, of these grand new buildings like this beautiful Carnegie Library, and of services expanding across the state. It was the institution telling its own success story. But here's the thing. Historians call these institutional accounts. It's the official version, the view from the top looking down, and they're valuable for sure for understanding how the organization worked. But they're missing something absolutely crucial, the real human experience. They tell you what happened, but they almost never tell you how it felt. And that was the giant missing piece of the puzzle. All these reports about progress and growth, but nothing from the farmers, the teachers, the kids, the actual people using these libraries. Where were their voices? And then she found it. I mean, this is the kind of discovery a researcher just dreams about, and it changed absolutely everything. She found them, the missing voices. And get this, they were hidden in plain sight, right there in the official reports from the Depression era. They weren't in some dusty, forgotten box in a basement. They were tucked away in this little section about correspondence. It was called the mailbag. For 13 years, right smack in the middle of the Great Depression, the Library Commission included a few pages in their annual reports filled with direct quotes from letters they'd received from ordinary Missourians. This was the missing link, the raw, unfiltered human element that just brought all those cold statistics to life. And let me tell you, these were not just simple thank you notes. These letters were raw. They were powerful testimonials about what having access to books meant to people during one of the hardest times in American history. Just listen to the power in this one quote. I would have lost my mind. I mean, think about that for a second. For this person, books weren't just entertainment. They were a psychological lifeline, a way to escape, to cope, to just keep going. The letters also revealed this incredible hunger for knowledge. This one describes farmhands, men with maybe an 8th grade education at best, using their few precious spare moments to debate philosophy. Not for a class, not for anyone else, but simply, as the letter says, because they were interested. Wow, that's a kind of depth the official records could never ever capture. And this one word kept appearing again and again. Starved. People weren't just asking for books, they were starved for them. It shows you they saw reading not as some luxury, but as essential nourishment. Truly, food for the soul. But, as powerful as this discovery was, it raised an even more important and more difficult question. If these voices were finally being heard, who was still silent? So here's the harsh reality. The official records were using all this inclusive language, open to the public, free to all. But this was Jim Crow-era Missouri. Segregation was the law of the land. So when the record said public, they didn't really mean everyone. This first-hand account from a resident named George Brooks just makes it painfully clear how the system worked. The rule said you had to be a property owner to use the library. Now, that doesn't sound explicitly racial, but it was absolutely a systemic barrier designed to screen out African Americans. It ensured the public library wasn't truly public at all. So in the end, even the amazing mailbag discovery revealed a deeper, more profound problem, a near total erasure of the Black community from the record. The reports just operated on this default assumption that the public meant the white public. And sometimes in history, the most powerful finding isn't what's there, it's the silence. And all of this, the archives, the mailbag, the silence, it all brings us right back where we started. Full circle, back to that little trailer library in Morrisville that kicked off this whole journey. I mean, just look at this contrast. On the left, you have the grand dream of the past, and on the right, the modest, humble reality for so many rural libraries today. It's just a stark reminder that the struggles for funding and for access are far from over. And in a really sad twist, the very library that inspired all this incredible research, well, it's gone now. It faced a modern set of challenges. Very few people were actually coming, and then the HVAC system failed. The repair bill was going to be over $18,000. The board had to make an impossible choice, and in the end, they just had to close the doors for good. And here's the part that's truly haunting. More than a year after the doors were locked for the last time, the researcher asked local students about the closure. They hadn't even noticed it was gone. A place that was once a vital lifeline for a community had just vanished without even a ripple. So this whole story leaves us with a challenge, doesn't it? The official records will always tell one version of events. The real question for us is, what are the mailbags in our own communities? What hidden voices can we find if we just look a little closer? And maybe, most importantly, who are we still not hearing from at all?